Welcome, Climate Viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com. And today we're going to talk about the basics of chemtrails, geoengineering, military agendas, what's in the fuel, what's in the air, what's in the clouds, what the hell is going on. For those who don't know, for those who are new here, I've been studying this topic for well over 10 years. There have been many times in the past where I was wrong, and I've deleted more than I've probably written. But I believe that what I'm going to spell out for you today is as clear and succinct a story as I can tell you about the big picture of chemtrails, what they are, why they matter. Now, a lot of people would have you focus on the word because semantics really matter a lot to a lot of people. Welcome to everybody who's watching this live on YouTube. I see several people already in there. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope that you guys will share this later on. Greatly appreciate that. Sharing is caring. If you are new here, please remember to hit that subscribe button if you're liking what you're about to see. And, you can always support my work on Patreon or PayPal. That's greatly appreciated. So, my main page is Cirrus Clouds Matter, the Shady Truth About Chemtrails. And I want to go ahead and define for you what I mean by chemtrails, because chemtrails is one of those words that has different meanings to different people. So if you're looking to find this, it's at climateviewer.com/Cirrus Clouds Matter. And the reason why I use that, of course, it's a play on Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Cirrus Clouds Matter. And the reason why they matter is because so many people focus on just the word chemtrail or contrail. And I think that's one of the greatest cons of all is that people don't understand that there's a lot more to this than just these clouds that we're seeing. When we're referring to chemtrails, it can have many different meanings. And I summarize that best on 5 types of real chemtrails, just the facts. So we're going to go through those and the bigger picture. The 5 main types of chemtrails that we're going to discuss: artificial clouds, sounding rockets, biological warfare, human testing, and weather warfare. And included in all that is geoengineering. So, why does this matter? Now, on my frequently asked question page, if you're trying to find it from the main menu here, you just go to the geoengineering page, which is like the kickoff for everything I have. And, it talks about how geoengineering will kill people, how David Keith admits to that. And then there's a frequently asked questions section followed up by the geoengineering subsections of HAARP and chemtrails. So that's where you get to this. Go to main menu, geoengineering, click on chemtrails, and you're there. So this is the frequently asked question page for chemtrails, which is much, much, much more lengthy. Master Builder says chemtrails aren't clouds. Some chemtrails aren't clouds. And that's what you're about to find out. So bear with me. You're going to learn a lot today, obviously, if you think chemtrails aren't clouds, and it's just that damn simple. Nothing in life is simple. Very few things can be explained with a one-liner or have a single cause. Let's put it that way. Like climate change. Climate change is not singly caused by CO2. The climate is changing because China dumps more plastic in the ocean than all other countries combined, and the list goes on. But right off the get-go, I was arguing with Fox meteorologist Paul Delgado, and Chris Fallon, the director of HAARP, actually kind of stepped in on my behalf to correct him. And he said, with apologies to Paul Fox, who's doing his best under the circumstances, here are some pictures of trimethyl aluminum trails from sounding rockets launched at the Poker Flat Research Range north of the University of Alaska Fairbanks. In other words, legitimate chemtrail science. that is straight out of the mouth of the previous director of HARP, who I talked to on the cell phone. But of course, I had been talking about sounding rockets long before I ever spoke with Chris Fallon, and that was kind of the point I was trying to make. So here we have the Cirrus Cloud FAQ, or frequently asked questions section. These are extremely lengthy. I'm not going to read them all to you now because this would make for an extremely long video. But how language controls the chemtrail debate, best exemplified with my debate with Mick West, the Darth Vader of chemtrail debunking from metabunk.org and contrailscience.com, mickwest.com. Now, I could have nailed him to the wall on these Freedom of Information Act requests that I have on all of this stuff straight from the military's mouth. But instead, I focused on semantics. And what do I mean by semantics? The use of words to control people, and how that the most basic way to control a person's mind is with words, because perception is reality, and that's what public relations and all of that is about. Where can I find out about geoengineering our local area? Trying to research is sometimes difficult. Too many monkeys and not enough organ grinders. Isn't that the truth? You can find out about geoengineering. I would say more weather modification, because geoengineering is a global problem. You can find out all the information about weather modification on weathermodificationhistory.com and climateviewer.org. Go to the geoengineering and weather modification section. This is if you're in the United States. I also have a recent article, which you can see on the front page of climateviewer.com. And it should be, where is it at? Right here. Map of United Nations tracking weather modification projects, 1952 through 1999. If you're worldwide, and you can actually see who, what, when, where, and why. And this map is available, like I said, over on climateviewer.org. And you can actually go here. There is a 3D globe trigger alert for flat earthers out there. This is a 3D globe, but for you flat earthers who really get triggered by round things, I was nice enough to include a flat earth mode. So you can just click that flat earth button, zoom out, and then bam, everything will flatten itself out for you, and you can go on and have a happy day. But regardless, you can see all of those weather modification projects, and they will say things like increased snowpack in North Colorado, 1993. Who did it, where, and when, and why, and all of that sort of thing. And like I said, all of that is under history and science, geoengineering, and weather modification. And you can see all of my weather modification maps here, like the 50 years, Colorado cloud seeding generators, and then the actual reports from NOAA that are required by law for weather modification in America. But we got sidetracked. Back to the story. So we were talking about the 5 types of chemtrails. Now, the majority of the FAQ on this page focuses on chemtrails versus contrails, just the aircraft traffic, the stuff we see in the sky every day, the stuff that looks like this. I took this photo literally 2 days ago using my cell phone. And this was, me driving my kid to school in the morning, 7:50. And that's that's what my sky looks like in Sumter, South Carolina. This is what most people focus on because, of course, it is climate change over your head, in your eyes. You see it every day. It's weather modification. You had a nice, pretty day. It got all screwed up by plane farts. Now we got clouds everywhere. Now, a lot of people would like to focus on simply that, they're trying to kill us. They're spraying us like bugs. All this terminology I feel is not helpful. It's a little hokey, and it turns off, most sane people who aren't, really into this topic. So I find that to be, not helpful at all. So I'd like to arm you with terminology. Hazy days are crazy days. Ain't that the truth, Marky boy? But that's the main problem with this is, as Edgar Allan Poe said, believe nothing you hear and only half that you see. And a lot of people make the argument that contrails disappear and chemtrails do not. But then the science people will say, well, we have persistent contrails. And even when I'm debating scientists, I say to them, when a contrail persists, what does it turn into? And they look at me and they kind of go, ah, damn, a cirrus cloud. So whether it's a chemtrail or a contrail to you, if it fans out and it covers the sky, it is no longer either. It is now a cirrus cloud. A cirrus cloud is an ice cloud. That's why cirrus clouds matter. So chemtrail, contrail, doesn't really matter to me what you call them. Me and my daughter, we call them plane farts. But if you're talking about what you're seeing right here in this photograph, when they fan out and block out the sun, that is a cirrus cloud. And it has serious problems for the climate, for your personal sanity, for some of you. And that's why I talk about this topic. But let's get into the real details, because this is really what everybody wants to know. What's in it? Is it dangerous to me, and what's in it? So are cirrus clouds filled with metals? Right here, this is probably the one that everybody wants to know, dying to know. And you've probably by now seen this photo I created on many websites. I created the photo and forgot to watermark the damn thing, and you know how that goes. But regardless, this is straight from dtic.mil. So it's .mil is in military. And the paper is called Trace Element and Polycyclic Aromatic Hydrocarbon Analysis of Jet Engines Fuels Jet A, JP5, and JP8. And as you can see here, Jet A, it says not detected for aluminum, but that's not possible. And I'm sure if you tested 20 different samples of Jet A, JP5, and JP8, every sample would have differing amounts than what's visible here. But regardless, right off the bat, what we see, 2,100 parts per billion of aluminum in jet fuel in JP5, and 9,360 parts per billion, or 9.3 parts per million in JP8. Now, I highlighted strontium and titanium. You can see barium is kind of minuscule at 3, 9, and 38. But as you can see, when you go from Jet A, JP5 to JP8, it just gets dirtier. Except for in the case of sulfur right here, which is kind of ironic, the JP5. But regardless, 100 parts per billion of titanium in Jet A, 1,056 parts per billion of titanium in JP8. Lots of freaking metals, okay? Now, most people would make the argument that this doesn't matter. These are minuscule amounts. When you're talking over 100,000 flights per day, over 60 years of this stuff building up in the stratosphere, because not all of this just rains down. Recently, the Indian Space Organization found carbon black dust filled with all these metals at 18 kilometers in the sky. Yes, that's the stratosphere. That's past the ozone layer, and that's a big freaking problem. So this is actually leading to a whitening of the sky. All of these metals are nanoparticles. The smaller the particle, the longer it'll persist in the atmosphere. That's the problem that we have right here. So you're seeing all of the this is chemical analysis directly from the military. The big one that most people don't notice, and I should have put a red arrow next to, I may revise this image and do that, is calcium, another metal, believe it or not. And it goes from 555 parts per billion to 5,256 in JP5 to 31,000 parts per billion in JP8. Interestingly enough, David Keith and King Caldera recently talked about a more sane geoengineering idea of using calcium to geoengineer the planet. JP8 at 31,000 parts per billion of calcium should be a huge red flag. But regardless, these are the chemicals found in the jet fuel just all by itself. Now they're actually using what's called biofuels for contrail control, because it turns out there have been many who've made statements that the cirrus clouds being created by planes are, heating up the planet. They're trapping heat. I have those statements here as well. Let's see here. Are cirrus clouds melting the poles? And you can see that clearly there was a 50-year agenda to do just that, to move Earth and melt the poles. End of iceberg menace. And this was back in 1919, I believe. 1921, Carol Livingston Riker, the New York engineer, said this, that, we could send the Gulf Stream unchilled into Arctic's heart, abolishing fogs and extreme cold. Let's melt the poles. And then 1929, Herman Oberth said, let's use giant mirrors on a space station to focus sun's radiation on the Earth. This was also known as the sun gun, created by the Nazis. The idea to create a focusing lens to focus the sun, also known as the burning glass. This is 1929. Julian Huxley, a biologist and Secretary General of UNESCO, said, why don't we explode a bunch of atomic bombs at an appropriate height over the polar regions, and that'd be a good thing. Well, that actually happened. So the idea of melting the poles by using nuclear warheads, that was a thing. It actually happened. So if you come up here to the North Pole, especially in Russia, you can actually see all of those nuclear blasts on ClimateViewer 3D. And there's a lot of them. And if you scroll in here, you'll see a whole bunch more. And each one of these is timed and dated and stamped and all of that. So you can see USSR 1980, the site, weapon development, underground tunnel for this one. And that's where some of the ice is. But regardless, there was a whole lot of blowing up nuclear bombs in the North Pole. So back to the story. Then 1958, Gorodsky and Cherenkov said, let's place a ring of potassium particles into Earth's polar orbit to diffuse light reaching the Earth and increase solar radiation to thaw the permanently frozen soil of Russia, Canada, and Alaska. And then they did that. That was called Project Westford, the Westford Needles. They released 480 million copper dipole antennas. You can see one right here on the tip of this guy's finger. Why does all this matter? Because in 1966, the Committee on Atmospheric Sciences from the National Research Council stated in their report, Weather and Climate Modification Problems and Prospects, that supersonic transports could be double the concentration of water vapor naturally present, and that a 5-fold increase in stratospheric water vapor would raise the temperature of Earth's surface by 1.6 degrees Celsius. So, most of the debunkers for the chemtrail world will say this is just water vapor. Well, guess what, moron? Water vapor is the most potent greenhouse gas. So all of this is, a big problem. Why? Because they've now pretty much admitted to that. Cloud blanket warms up melting ice cap. Clouds enhance Greenland ice sheet meltwater runoff. Greenland ice sheet melts more when it's cloudy. This is the actual science paper right here. And they pretty much admitted now that all of these clouds that we're seeing are melting the poles. And they're doing this because what they do is they trap outgoing radiation. So during the day they cool, and at night they trap heat, and that's a problem. So that's led to what's called the new Cold War. And you can see this here. Let me kill my sound real quick. Don't need that happening. The new Cold War for drilling rights in Alaska. Go away. And you can see the areas that they want to drill. So if you Google the new Cold War, Russia sends troops, missiles to the Arctic as Putin stakes a claim for the region's oil and gas. How did Photoshop get in the way? Go away. New Cold War, Russia sends troops and missiles to the Arctic as Putin stakes a claim on region's oil and gas reserves. So while they'll tell you that they're so concerned about climate change and they're so concerned about global warming, they don't want to melt the poles and they want to save the Arctic. We're in a Cold War to get to the oil and gas in the Arctic. Fact. So I'm going to leave it there with the whole, chemtrails versus contrails, what the clouds do. They're filled with metals. Are cirrus clouds filled with metals? You bet your ass they are. And, the list right here, chemical characterization of freshly emitted particulate matter from aircraft exhaust during single particle mass spectrometry, 2016. The detected metallic compounds were all internally mixed with soot particles. The most abundant of the metals in the exhaust were chromium, iron, molybdenum, calcium, aluminum, vanadium, barium, copper, lead, manganese, selenium, titanium, zirconium, all of these things. So are there metals in there? Yes. Is it a problem? Yes. And that's just the way it is. So I went and looked this stuff up and, trying to find a solution to why there was a big jump in chemtrails that occurred in 1997. And it seems to me there's a correlation between NATO switching from a gasoline-based fuel to a kerosene diesel-based fuel. They switched from their old-style gas to JP8. And JP8 is a dirty fuel. And looking into that, I did a whole lot of research on this. I'm going to scroll down to the important part. But propulsion research could revolutionize jet fuel. Development of a cold flow fuel additive can lower commercial airline operating costs. Air Force Research Labs Propulsion Directorate, Turbine Engine Division, Fuels Branch, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. And they came up with this stuff called Spec Aid 8Q462. It's a triple cocktail of chemicals that, that ended up, creating what's called JP8 plus 100. It raises the fuel's thermal stability by up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit hotter without increasing its property to form coke. Coke is sticky stuff in the inside of the engine. But Betts Dearborn, which is now GE Water, owns the rights to this 8Q462. And it's called a HITS additive, a high thermal stability additive. Lots of information on this on my NATO page. And this, in my opinion, is why we saw, a massive increase of this on a worldwide basis. So here are the different fuel types: Jet A, Jet A1, JP, Jet B, JP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, plus JP8 plus 100. NATO designation F37, JP9, JP10, and JPTS. Now, what do they put in that? Then they add stuff to it. So they have things like a corrosion inhibitor lubricity, improver, fuel system icing inhibitor, static dissipator additive, the plus 100 additive I just mentioned, antioxidants, metal deactivator additive. All of these are chemicals that they're adding to the fuel that are also adding to the problem, in my personal opinion. You can see a full breakdown chart of this right here. I've got an image of it, and I actually included that as a Google Doc so you could really zoom in and see all of this stuff. And at the top, they have the different types of fuel: Jet A, Jet A1, F44, F40, mil spec, JP4, JP5, JP7, JP8, Jet B. And then it's got, basically down here on the side, all of the different additives. So static dissipator additive status 450, or dinonaphthalene sulfonic acid, DENZA. And you can see that pretty much ... it's in all of them. Same with the antioxidants, ditertiary butyl phenol, many different mixtures of this stuff. It's in all of them. Anti-icing additive, diethylene glycol monomethyl ether, all the way across the board in all of them. And down at the bottom, it shows you what these mean. If the dot's there, it's there. If it's an O, it's optional. If it's an A, it's there by agreement. If it's engine manufacturer's agreement, it's an E. If it's an R, it's required. And you can see that all the way down. So corrosion inhibitors, many different versions of this. Nalco, High-Tech, Spec 8 AQ22. And then down here is the high thermal stability additive, HITS additive, Spec 8 AQ462, Aeroshell Performance Additive 101, Turboline FS 100C and 100, and JFA 5. And you're going to see also leak detection additive, Tracer A, that's in Jet A and A1. And then biocide, biobor and Kathon. This is actually to kill bugs growing, or germs, bacteria growing inside the wings of the plane. So all of these chemicals are added. And I went through and I started really looking at what was in these chemicals, because I wanted to, have a breakdown of all of the different chemicals in their, material safety data sheets. And that's when it really got weird. Because a lot of this stuff, it's just not out there. I mean, you're not going to find it anywhere. I think I have it on this page somewhere, but I'm having trouble finding it because it's very lengthy. But anyway, this is all handled by the NATO Pipeline Committee, NATO Fuels and Lubricants Working Group, and Working Group Number 1 Special Tasks. So they pretty much determine in all these countries listed here, they're in colors. If you want to know why, this is a serious problem, and Moron thinks this is a joke. Morons think this is a joke. I agree this is a serious problem. That's why I'm trying to educate people on it. But nobody really seems to care. They're too busy with football and other things. But regardless, these are all the countries that simultaneously in 1997, had this big change in what people were seeing in the sky. And it has to do with, in my opinion, what's called the NATO single fuel concept. It began conversion from JP4 to JP8 in 1988. In 1996, conversion to JP8 was complete. In 1997 was the first time any website on the internet ever used the word chemtrail. That is not a coincidence. So from 1988 to 1996, NATO was switching from JP4 to JP8. And in 1997, when they were done, that's the first time the word chemtrail was ever used on the internet. And the first article ever written about chemtrails was about, wait for it, JP8 jet fuel. So if you want to know about what those clouds are, why they're a problem, you really need to look at what's in jet fuel. Ignore the jet fuel hoax. These morons out there trying to make a buck convincing you that jet aircraft run on air. I think that this is yet another psyop to get people to stop looking at, this seriously. In my personal opinion, most of the people that talk about chemtrails, not most, but a good majority of the people that talk about chemtrails on, social media, they're paid for by the airline industry to keep people away from this topic because they don't want you to really focus on the seriousness of what's going on here. But there's the timeline, and timelines don't lie. And it coincides with, August 1997 Teller at Lawrence Livermore National Labs Geoengineering proposal, the Weather Test Modification Test Technology Symposium in 1997, Owning the Weather in 1995. 1994 was the Plus 100 additive tests. Stratospheric Wellsback seeding patent was 1992. And all this happened between 1998 and 1996 when they did the conversion. So in October of 1997, the Plus 100 additive was in 1,000 U.S. Air Force jets, and that's why people see a whole lot of military planes that seem to put out way more clouds than the commercial ones flying overhead. They're not on radar because military flights are not going to be on flight tracker radar, period. All right, so I think we beat that horse to death. But wait, there's more. This is more recent information from Defense Logistics Agency, the nation's combat logistics support agency. Air Force exercises expeditionary fuel additive injection in Estonia. And right here, you got a little dude pumping some chemicals, into what looks to be a Kiowa Scout or a little bird helicopter. But regardless, Amari Air Base, Estonia, July 13, 2018. The U.S. Air Force is successfully converting locally procured jet fuel to create military specification fuel needed to power American and NATO jets and ground equipment in Estonia's Amari Air Base. The Air Force fuelers, for Air Force fuelers, this is a routine process and serves as a model for the Department of Defense to maintain the capability to inject additives in fuel to create resiliency in the bulk petroleum supply chain. But this goes back to the NATO fuel pipeline committee. They're constantly, doing this stuff. Assisting the Air Force in executing service level responsibilities in Estonia, supplying the fuel system icing inhibitor additive increases service members' ability to additive fuel in a tactical environment. In a show of NATO cooperation and interoperability, Amari Air Base, Estonia is providing one of the 3 jet fuel additives used to create JP-8, Jet Petroleum 8 fuel, used to power the U.S. Air Force's F-16 jets, strengthening U.S. and NATO combatant command readiness in Europe. A NATO member since 2004, Estonia uses NATO-grade JP-8 fuel, a grade of aviation fuel, jet fuel produced to military specifications that includes several additives such as fuel system icing inhibitor, static dissipator additive, and corrosion inhibitor, making it suitable energy source for most military aircraft and tactical vehicles. And that goes right back to what I showed you up here. This is what they require: antioxidants, static dissipators. Static dissipators to keep the plane from blowing up whenever they go and pull they go take the fuel pump and they stick it in there. If a static charge jumps from the pump to the plane, boom. And that happened a lot in Vietnam. So they've been putting static dissipators in ever since. Plus, Viet Cong gunfire was literally hitting the wings of the planes and exploding them. So, this is to cut down on static. Oh, by the way, it's a barium fuel additive. But moving along, the 5 types of real chemtrails. I've covered some of the big one, which is artificial clouds. And by artificial, I mean man-made cirrus clouds, because cirrus clouds matter. So that's the one that most people are interested in. That's the one most people talk about. That's why I spent the most time talking about it. Now, for the rest, I'd like you to do a little bit of homework. I'm going to put all of these links into a single article in the near future with this video attached. Here's the link for you to check it out at home. Dropped it in chat. But basically, it goes like this. We have the 10 technologies to control the weather today. If you guys haven't seen this video, I really suggest you do. But I go through all of that, from ionospheric heaters to sounding rockets, satellites, lasers, cloud seeding, cloud ionizers, geoengineering, ship tracks, contrail-induced cirrus, and water vapor pollution from things like wet surface air coolers. All of that, leads to weather modification of one sort or another. Aluminum, barium, and chemtrails explain just the facts. My speech to the EPA about flight pollution when I went up and I was on C-SPAN, and I gave them hell about all of the metal particulates coming out of these planes and how they're creating cirrus clouds and how that's a problem. Recent video footage of what sounding rockets look like. You can see this. This is from Project Azure, sounding rocket chemtrails from space. Recent article video I did. And you can actually see it right about here. This is what a sounding rocket looks like. Damn it, I hit my up button. And here we go. Am I clicking that? No, I'm not. It's in my other video. How ironic. And you can see the 4 separate, probes coming out of the sounding rocket. That's barium up at the top, followed by trimethyl aluminum at the bottom. And you'll see the big gray trails coming out. And then they let that blow in the wind. But these are what I call chemtrails from space. They're high altitude. They're, about, and watch right here, boom. Another barium release right there. It looks like it's mixed with lithium because of the green color. 4 separate probes are dropping. You can see them dropping here. Not much longer, baby. And that's what sounding rockets look like. So you can read all about that. It's a thing. Andoya Space Center, NASA rocket launch Azure program, April 5th, 2019. So that's a pretty recent one. Gravity waves, barium clouds, and chemtrails from space. Presentation on ionospheric heaters, kind of sidetracked there. Biological weapons, commutives, and terrorism. This is your if you really want to see about human testing and military agendas and sneaky crap going on, that's the one you want to read. It's kind of a mind bender, and it talks about things like Chris, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you subscribing. It talks about things like Agent Green and F-oxysporum and the gay bomb and all of these different chemical weapons that they invented. It was a conspiracy, military experiments on unsuspecting public. The CIA, weather warfare and climate terrorism. Henry Kissinger, the CIA and weather warfare. CIA tampered with Cuba's weather, not just Vietnam. Read all about that in there. Military chemtrails, more of the same, except this one comes with Freedom of Information Act requests that are over on weathermodificationhistory.com. and you can read all about those there. And, it was Lyndon B. Johnson said, it lays the predicate and foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather. He who controls the weather will control the world. Determine the world's cloud layer. Big words right there. 1956 through 58, somewhere in there. But regardless, read all about this stuff. Carbon black dust, the chemtrail secret for weather warfare, geoengineering, and ozone destruction. Big long presentation I did. It's a PowerPoint. You can download it, send it to whoever you like. So, and then just to give you an example, this is weathermodificationhistory.com. And you can see right here, Navy scientist creates clouds, breaks them up, 1958, using carbon black dust. So they've been doing this a long time, the military that is, and you can read all about this stuff on weathermodificationhistory.com under the tag artificial clouds. So just click artificial clouds and you can read all about the chemtrails, the contrails, the biofuels for contrail control, and everything in between. All right, so what do we got left? Finally, the last thing I want to talk about is accidental geoengineering with ship tracks and contrails. And basically, this is something I wrote for climatex.mit.edu. It became the most shared article on their website, and they promptly deleted it, but there's the URL that it was at. Basically, the gist of this is that I want you to see is two things. It's that they want to call this an accident. And at this point, it's no longer an accident. I mean, it's ridiculous to continue to call it an accident, especially when, they're saying that they want less warming and more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. So there is a goal to create these clouds. They don't want this to go away. And the proof is in the pudding right here. This is MIT Technology Review. We're about to kill a massive accidental experiment in reducing global warming. And they are referring to ship tracks, which you can see these white lines. These are left by international shipping. Globalization, bad for the environment, bad for the chemtrails, bad for the clouds. And you can see that clearly on here. But, it's a massive accidental experiment in reducing global warming. Oh, wait, what do they say about aircraft contrails? Once again, airplane contrails may be creating accidental geoengineering. So I hope that you guys will definitely read this one because this is a very lengthy article. It is well referenced. I got more emails from scientists going WTF on this article than anything I have ever written, because I really went through it. And as AMEG's John Neeson said, we suggest that the G20 should initiate an international project with the Manhattan Project's focus and intensity. Another individual actually used that quote and made a book called The New Manhattan Project. But that's what we're facing right now, is that people are using dirty fuels in shipping, in aircraft, to cloud the sky. That has major effects geoengineering wise, whether it's accidental or not. And, basically they are justifying all this because dinosaur farts cause global warming in their ice cores that they dug up. And that's why they're going to continue to push for adding sulfur to jet fuel, to shipping fuel, because they believe that sulfur mimics what volcanoes do naturally. And that, basically, if we put enough sulfur in the sky and we reduce the amount of soot in the sky, that they could cool the planet instead of trapping heat with the clouds. But guess what? Who makes that fuel? The fuel industry. What does the fuel industry want? They want the oil and gas under the North Pole. So it's a tug of war right now that's going on, in my personal opinion, between the fossil fuel industry that actually powers the planes and the boats that are doing all of this, and between the scientific community that believe global warming is going to be the end of the planet and want to save the poles. Crypto Pirate, I appreciate you, brother, man. Says, Jim, love you, brother. Thanks for all your hard work. Also, I wish I could live chat with Ice Age. If you could live chat with Ice Age Farmer, he loves your website. I would love to. I mean, if somebody can hook that up, tell him that my phone number is on my website. I mean, I don't know his phone number, or I would have called him already. We could set up a interview anytime, where we just have a discussion about all this. But I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, I'm always open to. I prefer open discussion, even when the other person's saying that I'm wrong, because at the end of the day, it's through that type of interaction. Even if it's the Darth Vader of chemtrails, Mick West, there's always an opportunity to grow when you stretch your boundaries and you challenge yourself. And that's why I personally enjoy debate. And I look forward to not just debate, but having conversations with other people who may hold similar beliefs, but just a slightly different take on it. Because you know what? They may bring something to the table I haven't thought of. Do I believe this is all satanic, Illuminati, Freemason, depopulation? At the end of the day, there's a possibility, but hanging on for some conspiracy to finally be proven true, because they found the note from the guy who said, let's put these chemicals in jets and planes and boats and all this to kill people. You're never going to find that. So what you have to do is you have to act on what you know, and what you know is enough to act. And what we know is there are chemicals that are being dumped in the sky on a daily basis to modify weather, to fly planes, to ship boats across the ocean. And all of this affects the weather. It is geoengineering the planet, and it is bad for your health. So instead of people focusing so heavily on CO2 as the main causer of global warming and climate change, don't blame CO2. Blame the climate changers, the individuals. Name names, be specific, and talk about that. Planes, ships, the fuels that they run, the individuals that are, doing atmospheric experimentation, the weather modification companies. They all have names like North American Weather Consultants and, Desert Research Institute. And, if you start to learn all of these names, then you can say, these are the people who are controlling the weather. These are the people who are dumping the chemicals. These are the people who are providing the chemicals that are dumped. We want something done about that. That's what I did when I went to the EPA. ASUFT, I don't even know how to pronounce that. ASUFT. Appreciate you, the super chat there. First time listener recommended by Mike Morales. Mike Morales is my brother from another mother. If you guys haven't checked him out, it's Above Ground World News. Check him out on YouTube. He is linked on my YouTube channel as well. So if you go to youtube.com/c/JimLee-ClimateViewer, or just search for ClimateViewer, all one word, on YouTube, you can find my channel, and Mike Morales is linked on the sidebar of my channel. So please check him out as well, and everybody that I suggest, because I don't suggest people for no reason. But yes, I appreciate Mike Morales and what he's doing, and I appreciate all of you climate viewers that have that are obviously not your average individual. You're wanting to dig a little deeper than the average groundhog, and that's why I do what I do. And I want you guys to know that even though this isn't the hugest community in the world, and I don't have 5 million subscribers, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And you are that small group of dedicated individuals that really want to know the truth, and, to provide for it, know the worst, and do something about it. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I hope that you'll continue to support my channel by subscribing, sharing this. Sharing is caring, because tracking the climate changers is a pretty tough job. And keeping up with all these names and everything and trying to keep it all organized. I do a lot behind the scenes. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be able to make more videos more often. Trying to work out building a studio right now as we speak. And I hope that you guys will, stick with me through that. Probably make my move to my other channel, the ClimateViewer branded channel, at some point in the near future. But regardless, I'll still be, either mirroring the videos on this channel or doing, a different take on the same stuff over here as well. But regardless, love you guys, mean it. Remember that with this information comes power. With power comes great responsibility. So please remember to use the information on ClimateViewer.com, ClimateViewer.org, ClimateViewer Maps, and WeatherModificationHistory.com to attack ideas, not people.
If this video resonates with you, leave me a comment, because I love hearing from y'all. First time here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell. The bell doesn't always work, so come to ClimateViewer.com and sign up for our newsletter. Remember, it would be impossible for me to do this without your support, so please join my Patreon or buy me a coffee on PayPal. And always, attack ideas, not people.
Kids are impressionable. That's why here at this station, we watch the programs and commercials your child watches carefully. He may see bad guys, but not in the role of heroes. And he'll learn that crime doesn't pay. Because your child's welfare is our concern, too. That's part of our code.
Better than anything you can get without a prescription. Anything. It's the best.